हर्षद पारेख सर, देवानंद सर एंड मिलिंद मोरे अपने आप को अनम्यूट कर सकते हैं सर और स्टार्ट कर
चिदानंद जी ने कर लिया है? चिदानंद जी ने कर लिया है?
मैंने म्यूट कर लिया हूँ, मेरा वीडियो ऑन है।
अच्छा अच्छा, ठीक सर, ओके।
Okay. Are we ready now?
यस सर।
या वी आर रेडी सर।
Okay. Good evening, friends. Today's topic is the art of looking, listening, and learning. Now, this phenomenon of looking is physical, physical as well as psychological. Like how we are able to see, like a tree, we are able to see the tree because light falls on the tree and that light is reflected and it enters in our eyes, and an image, very tiny image of the tree is formed on retina, and from there the message goes to the brain, and that inverted image which falls on the retina, it becomes again well. So there is some mystery inside our brain, how the brain is able to make the image upside down. And similarly, listening, what happens that how we are able to listen to a sound which is coming like a bird singing. What happens, like when I am speaking, the vocal cord inside my body is vibrating, and then that makes the air outside vibrate. It produces a wave called longitudinal wave. And when that wave goes into the ear and the drum in the ear begins to vibrate, and then we are able to hear a sound. And learning, of course, we generally, everybody is learning by reading, by experience, by thinking, and so on. I like to say you that when we look at an object, a visible light, which is an electromagnetic wave, and it had a very narrow range of frequency. And our eyes are sensitive only to light starting from red color light to violet color light, because the white light is made of 7 colors. And it is a very narrow range of frequency, like frequency of blue light, which is 400 nanometer, and red light about 700 nanometer. So our eyes are sensitive only to a very narrow range of electromagnetic waves. So we cannot see X-rays, we cannot see infrared, and we cannot see radio waves. And all these waves exist in the space around us, but we cannot sense it, the radio waves or X-rays. So, and similarly, listening, we can listen only to the sound which has a frequency between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz. And so ultra frequency sound we cannot hear. So our body is limited. Our senses are limited. What we know is very, very less compared to what we do not know. Now we coming to the word art. art, by generally we mean that people who are painting, artists or musician or dancers, that is kind of a performing arts. And according the root meaning of the word art is to keep the thing at its right place. That is the root meaning of the word. Now, how we see objects, it varies from person to person according to the background of the person. Like when a flower is shown to different kinds of human beings, the artist, when he looks at the flower, he may like to paint it, and a photographer would like to photograph it, and the scientist would like to put it under a microscope and like to know what is inside the flower, the matter inside the flower, and so on. Uh, but people who are kind of a mystic or spiritually oriented, they can look at the flower without the word, without thinking, and that is a marvelous way of looking in which we can feel kind of a communion with the flower in a non-verbal way. And sometimes poets also, they feel something very, very beautiful. And so there is one song which in old film, ये कौन हंसता है फूलों में छिपकर, means who is smiling in this flower. So our response to things which we see around, it depends on the quality of our mind. If our mind is very, very quiet, very peaceful, we can see things as they are without naming it. And that is what Krishna ji is talking about, the, the art of looking without thinking, without reacting, without bringing in response from the past knowledge, and so on. And similarly, listening. Also, we can listen very well if our mind is very silent, some classical music. And Krishna ji liked listening to classical music of the West, Beethoven or Mozart, and also chanting. The way Krishna ji was listening to the chanting, he was completely into the listening and not thinking about it. And one, Krishnamurti had a friend, Aldous Huxley, and he admired Krishnamurti very much. And they used to go for walks together. And Huxley knew that Krishnamurti was looking in a different way, with a silent mind. But Huxley, he was a very highly intellectual person, and he was not able to look very clearly at the objects when they went for a walk. His mind was working and he would name every object because he had so much knowledge. But he liked the way of looking in a different way, like the way Krishnamurti looked without thinking, without naming. And so Huxley could not do it. But then he came to know that there are certain drugs, if we take these drugs like LSD or mescaline, we can look at the objects in a different way, like the way the religious, spiritual people look. So he experimented with LSD and some other drugs, and he has written a book called Doors of Perception, and it describes his experiences of looking at the objects in a different way. And then he advocated also that people should take drugs. But then what happens that sometimes people can see something very beautiful or when they are under the effect of the drug. And then when they come back to the normal state, they feel life very dull, meaningless. And so they again like to take the drugs and they get addicted to the drugs. And then it does damage to the brain. And it has happened to many people. And I know some people who were taking drugs and then they had a stroke and they died at a young age. So taking drugs to look at the objects in a very beautiful way is very dangerous. And I had met one Swami in Varanasi, Swami Nijabodh. He was about 70 years old and he was living on Hanuman Ghat in Varanasi. And we had gone to see him. And then he had seen Krishnamurti. So he asked me, how, what is the height of Krishnamurti? So I said about 5 feet, 6 inches. Then the Swami said, no, he's much taller. And then he said at one time he saw Krishnamurti very tall, and at one time he saw normal height. Then he asked me about the color of Krishnamurti's skin, and I said it is brown. Then he said, no, Krishnamurti is like a European white skin. And then he again said that Krishnamurti is changing the colors and his height, and he wants you to notice all these things. Then I told the Swamiji that when people take LSD or some other drugs, they can see objects in a different way. Then the Swamiji said that, no, I have never taken any drugs. So I said, okay, maybe some people, when they go very deep into their own mind, their thoughts and feelings, and they become very, very sensitive to looking inward, then the quality of their brain changes and they can feel these changes happening in the brain. And then they can look at the objects without thinking, without reacting, looking at a flower or a tree or a human being as if they are looking for the first time with freshness. And this happened to me also, that I had gone very deep into looking inward after reading Krishnaji, and there are some changes began to happen in my brain, in my body. And first time I came to know how beautiful nature is. And it, it was like a new life. I know that when I was young, before I had gone to any school, I had seen a rose flower in the garden, and there was a dewdrop on the rose, and the sunlight falling on the dewdrop. And when the light entered in my eyes, I saw the dewdrop sparkling like a diamond, and the color of that dewdrop was changing every moment from red to violet. But then I went to school, college, university, and I gathered too much knowledge of the external world, many subjects, many books, and that way of looking went away, like how the children look at it. But then when I came to Krishnamurti's book, and he was talking about how to look at our own thinking and feeling, and um, picking up or going to the source of thinking. And I could do that. And to do that, if you or anyone else wants to look at the beginning of a thought, one needs the freedom to look. It means to be silent, to be very, very curious, attentive, and gathering all the energy, attention to look at the beginning of a thought. And when I was able to do that, I felt for the first time that there is no thinking, and one can have the senses working efficiently without thinking. And then I began to look more often, sitting quietly and looking inward. And slowly I begin to look at nature, at everything, colors, as if I was looking at for the first time. And there was a lot of freshness and a lot of confidence came because I begin to learn about my own problems of loneliness or fear or jealousy, anger. So when we come in direct touch with our own thinking, we begin to learn in a direct way. And it is different than reading Krishnamurti book and then thinking about it and then looking inward. That can also help, no doubt. But many people, in spite of reading books of Krishnamurti for many years, they feel that there has been no fundamental change or transformation in their life. So they still have ambition to become somebody, whether in some organization. They can have fear of future or attachment to power or money or property. So just by reading the books and thinking about it and then looking inward, even then it may not change the fundamental transformation which Krishnamurti was talking about. Okay, now I tell you about a little girl I knew about 1 or 2 years old. And on the full moon night, she was looking at Sharad Purnima, looking at the moon, and she was smiling and pointing out to other people, look at the moon. And maybe she did not know what it was called. So she had no knowledge of what that thing was, but it was very beautiful and she was very sensitive because her mind was not filled with knowledge. But her older sister, who was going to school, she was about 7, 8 years old, she was not able to look at the moon in that way. And during Diwali time, there were beautiful firecrackers going in the sky, colorful patterns. And I called that girl, 7, 8 years old girl, and said, look, and she said, oh, haven't you seen that? And she went away because already at a young age, we get used to seeing things, even beautiful things. We don't know what real beauty is because that sense of beauty comes only when our mind is silent, attentive, and can look without knowledge which we have gathered. That is why Krishnaji told one artist, uh, Krishnaji said to the artist who was depressed, uh, at one time he was very good, but then something happened in his life and he was depressed. And then he came to Krishnaji to discuss about his problem. And Krishnaji said in that dialogue, Krishnaji said, the word parrot has blocked you from looking at the thing which flies. So looking at the parrot is not through the word. And most of us, we already judge something as a good or ugly or something like that. But there is a state in which we can see the real thing behind the word. So the word is not the thing. And all the Krishnamurti's teachings, the words, they are not the thing, the real teaching. The real teachings, we have to see it in ourselves without the word. So that is what the spiritual teachings, whether of Upanishads or Bhagavad Gita, is not the word. And thinking about the word and producing more words, it's not like that. So if it says attachment leads to fear, like if you are attached to somebody and that person looks at another person and you feel jealous. So attachment leads to jealousy. It can lead to anger. It can lead to fear because when that person goes away somewhere and then you worry about that person. So the real teachings are looking at thoughts and feelings without judging, choiceless awareness, which Krishnaji says. And let me see, it is 6:30. Okay, I like to say something about my first meeting with Krishnaji was completely non-verbal in Ojai. He was standing under a tree all by himself after a talk. And a friend of mine said, look, Krishnaji is standing under a tree. Why don't you go and say hello to him? But I had no desire to meet him because his teachings were good enough for me to look at everything. But my friend pushed me. So when I came very close to Krishnaji, his eyes were fully open, but it seemed his mind was not there. So my mind also stopped. And then I extended my hand. He took my hand. And without saying anything, I went back. And in that moment, I understood what Krishnaji says that in real relationship, there are no images. Like most people, when they meet Krishnaji, they already have the image that he is such a great man. And so there is a division when you have that feeling that this is a great person and I am a small person. So there may be self-consciousness or a comparison or inferiority all may exist. So in literature, spiritual literature, this way of looking at the object in nature or everything, it is not looked through the physical eyes, but through the mind. And they say the third eye, Divya Chakshu, the inner eyes are open in some people, and then they see everything very clearly. And now, still we have some minutes, a few 5 minutes. So I will read out to you what Krishnaji has said about the art of looking, listening, and learning. One paragraph. This is what he says. Have you ever sat silently, not with your attention fixed on anything, not making an effort to concentrate, but with the mind very quiet, really still? Then you hear everything, don't you? You hear the far off noises as well as that are nearer and that are very close by. The immediate sound, which means you are listening to everything. Your mind is not confined to one narrow channel. If you can listen in this way, listen with ease, without strain, you will find extraordinary change taking place within you, a change which comes without your volition, without your asking. And in that change, there is great beauty and depth of insight. If you really want to listen, your mind is naturally quiet, is it not? You are then not distracted by something happens next to you. If you can listen in this way, you will find an astonishing transformation taking place in your heart, in your mind, a transformation which you will have not thought of. Such transformation is not possible if you listen superficially. Understanding does not come from effort. It comes when the maker of the effort is silent. In silence, actual transformation takes place. This is taken from This Matter of Culture in 1964. So Krishnamurti has said many, many beautiful things in very simple words. And we don't need to keep on reading again and again. What we need is to sit down quietly and be curious, to look inward and come in direct touch with our mind and feelings and thoughts. And if we can do it, because the first step of sitting quietly and turning the attention inward is the first step, and maybe that could be the last step. Then all the time all one can do is to sit quietly and look inward. And there is the book of our own life is being written every moment. And so instead of reading books of Krishnamurti and discussing about it, we can look at the book of our own life while it is being written. And in that, there is a real direct learning. And suppose if I get angry, if somebody tells me something unpleasant, I cannot blame that person, but I have to look what is it that makes me angry? Is it because I have some idea about me and I have some image and that image is getting hurt? And Krishnaji is explaining all that. So it's very simple actually. The teachings are very simple, very direct. If we can take the first step, and the first step is the last step. Okay, so I have said enough thing. Now, Chedanandji would like to say something. Thank you.
Welcome, Chidananji. We are
Thank
very
you.
much anxious to listen you, sir.
Yes. Thank you. After hearing Harshadji, who shared a lot of very, very wonderful observations, all of us are already driven to a certain silence. Which kind of silence? Our life somehow gets into various artificialities. Life is full of various pressures that we experience. We imagine that we have to be like this or we have to be like that. Sometimes we imagine that somebody is thinking about us in some way, and whether that person is thinking about us in that way or not, our imagining that he or she is thinking about us in some way causes agitation sometimes or happiness at other times. And all this is to be examined. What I called artificiality. We utterly lose the innocence of our childhood. Our adult life becomes so complicated. It is true that thoughts are all the time creating one illusion after another. And if we try to solve this problem by thinking more, by reading another book, or by going on talking something that we had read somewhere, the problem gets more complicated. Therefore, it is to be understood, or I must say, we all must understand the place of silence, the place of quiet watchfulness. And I hesitate to say it should be watchfulness towards our own thoughts or feelings, because as we examine the beautiful teachings of Krishnaji, we realize that he does not so much make a division. For if someone creates a certain model that, oh, I must now watch my thoughts, my emotions, I must cleanse myself, I must free myself, I must do this to myself. In the process, this lady or man gets so obsessed with herself or himself. This self-realization or self-inquiry or self-knowledge or self-observation, you call it whatever you may, becomes another trap into which we fall. Therefore, while it is true to some extent that it is our thoughts which create artificialities, build an ego, and generate baseless fears or unnecessary regrets and so on. We need not and should not get caught in this business of watching our own thoughts. Because when we draw a dividing line, me and my thoughts, others and their problems, that becomes another artificiality. Yes, in sitting quietly, in fact, we must hesitate to say even the word sitting, because sitting becomes another compartmentalization. Really speaking, insights can happen while we are walking. Insights can happen while we are talking. Insights can take place even while we are conducting a transaction. However, many times we use the expression, let's sit down silently. There's a reason, I guess, for that. For when we are transacting, when we are walking or talking, there is a certain likelihood. We can only talk in terms of likelihood or probability. When we are transacting, there is a likelihood of our getting more caught in some gain and loss and so those things. So by saying, let us sit down and look, let us sit down and listen, let us sit down and learn. I wonder why we say this sit down, but it seems to me that this sitting down is more indicative of letting go of any obsession with playing particular roles. Generally, we have a role that we take up, we cling to an image that we have of ourselves. We have all ideas of being senior or junior, being a teacher or disciple or the taught. We have countless ideas of who we are, and these ideas of who we are also need to be re-examined. Therefore, sitting down is not so much physically sitting down, but sitting down is letting go of our clinging to any particular idea of who we are. Suddenly it occurs to me without planning that the word Upanishad has the last part, sad. Sad means to sit down. In fact, sad is to sit with the preposition ni. Nisad means to sit down. So the rishis of India also asked us to sit down. And I would dare say that the rishis also did not imply so much physical sitting down, but I guess they wanted us to let go of any image that we may have of ourselves. This topic of this evening, looking, listening, and learning, has tremendous significance to the quality of our living. We do not live fully if we have not learned to listen. Our living is so superficial, so pretentious, and quite egoistic if we do not listen, if we do not look. The more we are in our own world, the more is the falsehood which we invite into our life. Therefore, this looking, listening, and learning is a way of pointing to the possibility of stepping aside from falsehood. Asatoma sadgamaya, they say. Let us go away from asat and let us move towards sat. Now, where is this asat? When we are not listening, there is asat. When we are not looking, there is asat. And when we refuse to learn and are bent upon proving our point, when we are adamant on telling someone, I am right, you are wrong, then there is asat. That doesn't mean that we must surrender to Tom, Dick, and Harry at the drop of a hat. The point is to have about us a certain tentativeness. Yes, I could be wrong, she could be right. And another time, well, though she is very learned lady, looks like in this discussion she seems to have taken a wrong step. I don't know. She could be wrong, I could be right. And to see that the she and I or he and I are not important. What is important is to find out what is right. What is right is to be found out. Whether he said the truth or I said the truth is to be clear about it. So I too, on my part, appeal to everyone here, including myself. Let's not bother about being orators or speakers or impressive, communicators. Though communication has a place of its own, let's be passionate students of truth and let's be keen about that. Thank you. I look forward to hearing from others now, beginning with Milindji.
Milind.
Namaste.
Well, thank you very much, Chidananji. Welcome, Mr. Milind More. We are anxious to listen you. Please go ahead.
Well, I have nothing much to add except maybe I could share some of my understanding or experiences which I have seen in my own life. I think both the speakers mentioned about the aspect of silence when we are looking at this art of looking, listening, and learning. So I was just wondering as to when was this aspect first came in my life. I mean, this aspect of silence. Now, a few of you may know that I was a submariner before I joined Krishnamurti School. And a submarine life, being underwater, gives tremendous opportunity to remain silent for long hours. I mean, that is a job which provides that opportunity. And I remember we were encouraged to listen to everything that is happening around us. I remember listening to machines. You see, I remember listening to diesel engines in my submarine to the extent where you could feel if there was any problem with the machine or the engine, you could identify it. I remember spending long hours listening on the sonar as to what was happening around the submarine and also outside the sea, listening to the sea life outside. And that listening still remains with me today as I go for my walks or listening to people or seeing some activity. And sometimes I wonder, in fact, today's topic about listening, looking, and learning, are they not the same thing? Words may be different, but in essence, are they not the same thing? Why I say this is, again, I'll share some of the experiences. At school, we have something called as Tinker Shed, where children get involved with a lot of hands-on activities. So I've seen children playing with their hands, making some item, some project. And when you see them totally absorbed and doing these hands-on activities, involving their senses, totally absorbed in it, one wonders whether is there any thought going on in their mind. And then the question arises whether does thought have anything to do with this listening, looking, or learning? Or is it independent of thought? In fact, I think it was in our previous or the one previous to that, we had talked about understanding, and wherein we had touched upon that Krishnaji has pointed out that there is only one kind of understanding, and that is mechanical understanding. The rest is all seeing. What does that imply? So these are the questions which comes to my mind when we are looking at a question like this. Krishnaji has also pointed out that learning and love have a quite same thing. Both are spontaneous, both are renewing all the time, both are fresh, and both are free of time in a way. So again, the question of thought comes in here, that one is, if one is pointing out that it is free of time, does it mean that is it free of thought? So this whole process of learning, the way conventionally we look at it in our schools or college or life in general, where we give tremendous importance to thought, the question is, are we not then on a wrong path, or are we not looking at it rightly? So I think I'll stop with this, because these are the basic questions which I think are central to these three terms, and maybe we could have more questions on this and perhaps learn more from each other. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, More sir. Anybody whomsoever wanted to ask or say something, please raise hand. Mr. Modak will allow them.
Yeah, maybe I could add another interesting thing which I came across recently is about listening. Krishnaji has talked about listening to a tree or seeing a tree. Now, listening to a tree, he says, not in the sense of a breeze, touching the tree and then you listen to the leaves in the breeze. He says, not that kind of listening. He says, can you listen to the trunk? Can you listen to the silence of the tree? Now, that's a very interesting question. And I put it on the table here for anybody's understanding.
Sir, I want to ask one question to Chidanand ji. Sir, I'm audible
yes.
now?
Yeah.
Yes,
Very
yes.
much.
Yes.
Sir, whenever we are reading some book is other than J. Krishnamurti, and suppose J. Krishnamurti is interfering in every aspect here and there, and not it become a hindrance to look what that book is saying directly to me. I am too much occupied with J. Krishnamurti and his thought and his way of seeing things, and it's all become like a mimicry to me. So there is a chance that even J. Krishnamurti become interference in the way I am looking directly to the thing, sir. I want to listen to you, sir. Because usually when I see speaker, they मैं पूछ रहा हूं आपसे कि प्रेम क्या है, आप बता रहे हैं मीरा ने प्रेम के बारे में ये कहा, और मैं आपकी समझ जानना चाहता हूं, तो ये डायरेक्ट समझ ये कैसी है, ये क्या है भेद? मैं समझा पाया सर मेरा प्रश्न?
Yeah, I think yes. I not only understand your question, but I myself also relate to that issue. As you know, I am a Vedanta teacher, and I sometimes am involved in what is called the motivational literature, and that certainly creates certain conflicts for Krishnaji's teachings. do not permit the operation of will. Krishnaji's teachings are so anchored in understanding. Out of understanding, everything flows. Whereas, as you began your question, while we read other literature, there's a different flavor. And what I understand of that flavor is there is the operation of will. Do this, do that, get up in the morning, and first 3 hours spend in this particular way, and so on. So perhaps it can be approached in many ways, but without making my answer very long, I would summarize the issue as a whole lot of so-called wisdom literature in the world makes room for the exercise of will, decision, resolving, and trying to change in a particular way, etc. Krishnaji leaves no room for it. And I personally don't have much conflict on it. That's how I am, continuing to be a Vedanta teacher and many other. I wear many hats. But with great sense of belonging, I join the JK dialogues also, because there's no conflict really. Krishnaji is the purer science. Krishnaji's teachings are a form of very pure science, whereas a whole lot of other literature are various kinds of applications. And in those applications, there is some concession made to the truth. However, at certain points of time, humanity, which includes me also, finds some of those applications appealing, maybe because of our own confusions, doesn't matter. But the ground reality is it does appeal to us. So we can put them in their proper places, and life remains an exploration. We go on exploring. I request Harshad or somebody to throw some light on this.
Yeah, I would like to say that after reading Krishnamurti, many people also get kind of a conditioned by Krishnamurti, and then they criticize other teachings, and they have a feeling of kind of a superiority. But the teachings is not in the words, it is in looking at ourselves, our own problems. And if that helps, Krishnamurti's teachings helps me in understanding myself and in relating with people around in a better way, then the teachings are good for me. But if reading Krishnamurti brings some kind of superiority or arrogance, then I think then a person is conditioned by Krishnamurti too. And the teachings are not in the words, but what is behind the words. And so what even Upanishads, if a person can go very deeply, one can come to that state where there is no self, like Shankaracharya's slokas, I am not this, I am not that, I am not body, I am not mind, I am no guru, I am not disciple, I am not brother, sister, father, mother. So it's like a neti, I am not this, excluding everything. And that is what Krishnaji's teachings are, that you are the world. There is no a duality between you and the world when the thinking no longer interferes in our life. So that is the highest state, of course. And that is what the Upanishad teachings are.
I think someone has raised his hand. Dinesh
Dinesh
Wagmare.
Dinesh
Yes, sir.
Wagmar.
Are you able to
Please
listen
go
to me, sir?
Yeah,
Yes,
everybody
yes.
is able to listen.
I want to ask that we are talking of Upanishad and the past knowledge. In that past knowledge, there are two things: Athato Dharma Jigyasa and Athato Brahma Jigyasa. They talk of always the third element or God element, or for the sake of convenience, I am using the word God, or Brahma, or there is an element which is beyond time and space. So, how can we say? Don't you think that JK teachings limits our? JK was not intended to make us conditional, but in one way we also get conditioned by the JK's teaching, and we limit ourselves to the thinking of JK, and we imitate many times the thinking of JK. Whereas Upanishad, if you see Upanishad or your Vedanta, they have considered thoughts and the experiences of the many rishis and many districts. Even we talk of Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya in US Chudamani, he is very clear. He said, first you have to listen to the Guru, then you have to first Shastra Prachiti, means you have to understand the Shastra by your understanding. Then you have to sit beside the Guru and you have to understand from him the exact meaning what he intends to say. And then there is Atma Prachiti. You have to keep aside all these Shastra and all your Gurus, and then you have to take your own journey and you have to find out the truth. So truth is actually all inclusive and it is beyond, but we get limited, we limit ourselves by the JK's thinking, isn't it? What you have to say, Yaranji?
Both Upanishads and Krishnamurti are great challenges to the human mind. As you perhaps know very well, Upanishads have been interpreted by so many commentators, Madhva, Ramanuja, Shankara, Vallabha, and Nimbarka, and so on. Therefore, in a manner of saying, God knows what Upanishads really conveyed. And similar is the tremendous challenge that we face when we try to understand Krishnaji. Though he has really over 4 or 5 decades or more, he has labored to convey his insights in most well-chosen words. I've heard that Krishnaji took great care to use his words, many times checking with the dictionary what the word means so that nobody misunderstands him. So both these are about certain depth of human living, and most of us, though we do have a taste for these things, are caught in our own conditionings. Therefore, we have to tread very carefully on this ground, and we are blessed indeed that we are exposed to Krishnaji, we are exposed to Upanishads, but finally it is what we call this light in ourselves. I think it's our honesty, our humility that will rescue us. Unless we are truly honest, humble, and receptive, and we are in no hurry to, own the knowledge and become master of it, etc., which are very foolish things to do. Unless we are, free of those ambitions, even in the field of understanding something, I guess we will be caught in yet another way. So it's difficult, Dinesh ji, to come to a conclusion about where to place these. I think as we inquire more, certain superficialities drop away. For example, in Upanishadic studies, in the beginning, a person may have some pride about this is the contribution of Indian sages and India, this and that. That will drop away after some time, because whole humanity has had some gems of seers, and white or black, Africans or Japanese people, there have been good and bad. So to cling to India in some kind of special way makes no sense. Therefore, a lot of shallow things drop away. Whereas in Krishnaji's literature, there are no shallow things to begin with. So therefore, most people simply don't understand Krishnamurti and just quietly walk away. Whereas in other literature, there are a lot of shallow things which they can hold on to, and they can become members of this and that society. In Krishnamurti's teachings, Though there are many who have not understood Krishnaji at all, they come from the beautiful natural surrounding centers, or I have not, purely because they dislike gurus or dislike gods or dislike something else. Then that is not a healthy way of being in a Krishnamurti group. More than appreciating Krishnaji's teachings, they have something against the traditional religion. So they are driven by a dislike than by sincere appreciation of what is being talked here. So let me conclude my comment saying, there's a saying, right, loko bhinna ruchihi. People have varied tastes and varied reasons for why they are participating in any particular discussion. But finally, we need to be sincere, we need to be humble. Then we will be led by that intelligence in the right direction, I guess.
Yes, sir. Actually, I also wanted to point out the same thing. It is very interesting when I also read, gone through the Upanishads and even JK teachings. I found a very interesting thing that every individual has reached to the truth in a different way. So his
Oh.
individuality is also coming into picture.
Yes,
So that is very
yes,
interesting.
correct.
Perhaps that's why JK told that we have to know ourselves and then we have to proceed further.
In tradition, they say that the thorn of ignorance can be removed by another thorn of knowledge, and then you throw away both. So that knowledge is a block, actually. Initially, yes, it helps us, but after one has understood very clearly, then there is no need for knowledge, gathering more knowledge. And like Buddha also used to say that these teachings are like a boat. They take you from this bank of the river to the other, but after you reach there, you don't carry the boat with you. So knowledge is helpful in the beginning, but after we begin to see ourselves very clearly what is happening within us as well as outside, we don't need any teaching. It tells us everything, whatever it is. Yeah. That's what I feel. Yeah.
What about this methods and upasana and all the paddhati and all the traditional rituals and all that?
Yeah. That is all right as long as it is helping the person to be free from this idea of me, you know. So that burden, it goes away from the mind. Then as long as that is not happened, one may stay with a guru, like many monks used to stay with Buddha. But once they begin to understand their clarity, then they don't need to be with Buddha like that. Because the
Thank you, sir.
source,
Thank you, sir.
yeah, okay. Thank you.
Is there anyone more wanted to comment? All are well. Mr. Verma, Pradeep Verma, please unmute yourself and go on. Pradeep Verma, please unmute yourself and then go on. Pradeep Verma, yeah, please speak.
Is it audible?
Yeah.
Yes, audible, very well.
Today's theme was, for me, the message is that all the three things, looking, listening, and learning, are very, very important to understand life. This is broadly the message for which we are using n number of words to give this message to the people. Now, I would like to share with you some matter, if you allow. Should I read out a small matter related to today's topic? Should I?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
Please do.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Seeing is an act. Seeing is an act. The question is not what to do, but how to see. Seeing is the most important thing. The act of seeing. I need to realize that it is truly an act, an action that brings something entirely new, a new possibility of vision, certainty, and knowledge. This possibility appears during the act itself and disappears as soon as the seeing stops. It is only in this act of seeing that I'll find a certain freedom. So long as I have not seen the nature and movement of the mind, that is discriminating mind, there is little sense in believing that I could be free of it. I am a slave to my mechanical thoughts. This is a fact. It is not the thoughts themselves that enslave me, but my attachment to them. In order to understand this, I must not seek to free myself before having known what the slavery is. I need to see the illusion. I need to see the illusion of words and ideas, and the fear of my thinking mind to be alone and empty without the support of anything known. And we have been describing all through something known, some past, some experience to tell something which is beyond experience. It is necessary to live this slavery as a fact, moment after moment, without escaping from it. Then I will begin to perceive a new way of seeing. Can I accept not knowing who I am? I'll repeat it. Can I accept not knowing who I am, being hidden behind an imposter? Can I accept not knowing my name? Seeing does not come from thinking. It comes from the shock at the moment when feeling an urgency to know what is true. I suddenly realized that my thinking mind cannot perceive reality. To understand what I really am at this moment, I need sincerity and humility and an unmasked exposure that I do not know. That I do not know. This would mean to refuse nothing, exclude nothing, and enter into the experience of discovering what I think, what I sense, what I wish, all at this very moment. Our conditioned thoughts always wants an answer. What is important is to develop another thinking, a vision. For this, we have to liberate a certain energy that is beyond our usual thought. I need to experience, I do not know. I need to experience, I do not know, without seeking an answer. To abandon anything, to enter the unknown. Then it is no longer the same mind. My mind engages in a new way. I see without any preconceived idea, without choice. In relaxing, for example, I no longer choose to relax before knowing why I learned to purify by the power of vision. Not by turning away from the undesirable or towards what is agreeable. I learn to stay in front and see clearly. All things have the same importance, and I become fixed on nothing. Everything depends on this vision, on a look that comes not from any command or my thought, but from a feeling of urgency to know. Perception, real vision comes in the interval between the old response and the new response. To the reception of an impression, the old response is based on material inscribed in our memory. With the new response, free from the past, the brain remains open, receptive, in an attitude of respect. It is a new brain which functions, that is different cells and a new intelligence. When I see that my thought is incapable of understanding that its movement brings nothing, I'm open to this sense of the cosmic beyond the realm of human perception. This is from Gurdjieff. This is the teachings of Gurdjieff by his most close disciple, Jadi Sazman. So this is what one can feel every moment, this newness, provided we are not asking for something, we are not asking any answers. We don't have questions to be answered by someone or the other with his capacities and his limitedness. So this is what all the three things, learning. For learning, one has to know that he doesn't know. But most of us, unfortunately, know something or the other, for whether we know or we think we know something or other. The more we read, the more we think we know. So all these things contribute a lot in seeing things as they are, whether I am willing to that for that. When I see a wildflower, I don't know anything about it. I am just going for a morning walk. I see wildflower. I don't know which genus, which species, how big and how small, but it is something beautiful calling me, and I see that without naming, that absorbs your little self. You don't have to do anything, nothing, no methods for this. So seeing, listening, all the three things require an inquiry to know the truth. Truth towards, we all want to know the truth, the way to truth, not as a substance, not as material, not as something final, but in this flow of life, we know right now, I don't know. That's why I want to listen. I don't know. That's why I want to learn. I don't know. I want to see, because exploration is my basic need. This is the nature. Life evolves like this only. Life evolves like this only. If you can't see things as they are, you are likely to be, you face something which is so very different. You could never imagine in your limited mind. So no expectations. But if you see the grand world around you, inside you, and you have that feeling of awe, that it is so very wonderful, you don't have to give a name. It's a feeling. Love is a feeling. It is not some sporadic, or love is a feeling. If it is a continuous river. So these things need lot of attention. Again, I may quote what he talked about, attention, Krishnamurti. When your self is in the minimum, all your energies are there, not for a particular thing, but entire thing you are exposed to, without expecting anything special out of your mind. So this is all the three things. Know whether I know something. If someone asks me, I don't know actually anything, apart from formal knowledge, which I can always talk about and give a speech on that. If you want to understand mutations, you see how it is mutating. COVID, double mutation, and its relationship with time. What is there to, you don't have to read even, you see the beauty of life changing so fast, to survive. And who helps the survival of viruses and bacteria and all these small-celled animals? Which energy? So these are the questions. If these questions, if they come to your mind, you understand life in a much better way. So many cases are coming, even after second vaccine, the people are getting this and that creates fear in our mind. What is fear? I am attached to my body, my personality. I want continuity. My mind wants continuity. Can I see all this in me? Why am I talking to you? Do I have really something to share? I have enjoyed certain things which I wanted to share with peer group and this circle. So that's why I have come with this. Although this, if I start talking and go on talking, it means I'm not satisfied. There is no completeness. The less completeness I have, the more I talk. So this is what I wanted to share, because if everything becomes like a mantra which Krishnamurti warned of, if you go on repeating the same story, the same words again and again and n number of times for 40, 50 years, it dulls your mind. You will lose your freshness of your mind. We do expect from foundation people, we do expect from the people who had close association with Krishnamurti in person, as well as in association, a greater association with the location he was in, with the ambience he enjoyed, with the friends he enjoyed. So what these important things, seeing, listening, learning, love, these four things which invariably come, and still I don't know the level of saturation, not saturation is not the word, the level of satisfaction you have, we have rather, or I have rather, to be more clear. So these things I have been thinking over to share with you my sincere feelings. Otherwise, what happens, we may show videos, we may read 10 pages from him here and there, and somehow pass on 1.5 hours. Does it help? I may go on telling my past experiences, my life experiences, but does it go to you non-verbally, or does it give you that sparkle in your individual life?
Thank you, Vermaji. Thank you for sharing all these things too.
He's asking me to stop it.
May I request Harshad sir to comment on it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. I talked about Aldous Huxley, who was a friend of Krishnaji, and he wrote very beautiful books, but he had a powerful intellect. But that really, he was not happy. He wanted to experience something non-verbal, seeing things very, very clearly. So even people who know a lot, who are highly intellectual, they don't have the freedom from the known. The known is binding them, I think. So the real happiness, it comes when there is no knowledge, no sense of I, and just functioning in life, looking at everything, learning without the self. That is why Krishnaji talked about freedom from the known. So the known, there is nothing new in the known. No matter how much knowledge we acquire, it means very little. And one time Krishnaji said about Aldous Huxley, he says that his mind was like a waste basket. That means too much knowledge. So the knowledge becomes a burden if we in this field of seeing things clearly about ourselves, about the world. But if you want to become important person, then knowledge is a power. But if you don't want power and money and all that, you are, really want happiness and live a very simple life, and you are happy with that, then one has to drop this knowledge. One can have knowledge, but then it will not become a burden. But without that intelligence, intellect can become a burden. So the intellect doesn't know what is intelligence, but intellect can come from intelligence, a higher way of a way of looking without the self. So this is what Krishnaji was also talking about.
But my experience can also
Milind-
become.
Milind
Just
More,
become
would you
knowledge.
please,
My
Milind
experience,
More, would
I
you
told
please, like, because you have not spoken. So Milind More, would you please say something?
No, I would just say, I was just wondering from some of the comments from the speakers and others who have joined us,
Yeah.
is about what do I take from this dialogue? Of course, as a tool, thought process, experiences, some knowledge, some readouts are in a way something which we are putting it on the table. But what is more important is as to is it leading to observation of my reactions to it? Is it leading to revealing something within me? What is the learning that is happening within me is, I think, the essence of this dialogue, where each one of us can help out in whichever way. I mean, I wouldn't go into the details of tools that we use, but it's more about observing my own reactions. So that's critical to a process of dialogue like this. That's all I have to.
Thank you. Chidananji, would you please comment? Because 7:27 is already. So would you please conclude, Chidananji?
Certainly. I personally found the discussion this evening very, very thought-provoking. There was both an appeal to inquire more, but a caution in everybody who spoke. There was a sense of caution about, in the name of inquiry, we should not simply get more verbose, just talking and talking. Inquiry has to be marked by certain examination, and if need be, without interference of words. So I think this was a very fruitful exchange of thoughts. In fact, in next dialogue, we want more participants to say something even for a minute, so that we get to know where we are, the whole group, whether some are best passively sitting. I hope there will be more participation. And even, as I said, even one or two sentences by almost everyone, that will be good. So I'm grateful to all of you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, can I fix a next Thursday topic? Would anybody from you, any speaker or any participant will suggest something for me, so that we can have, because it is
Well, other suggestions are welcome, but
Yes.
from my side, I
Chidanand.
suggest one
Yeah.
topic I suggest. What is humility? What is humility?
What is humility? Parik sir?
Yeah. We can have that. Yes.
Yes. More sir, you are not speaking.
Yes, sir.
We want lot from you. We are expecting so many things
No, I
from
think
you.
it's a very nice topic to deal with.
Yes.
I
So,
think
Yeah.
so all the three speakers will be there next Thursday. Is it okay?
What-
Is it okay?
What's the date? Date will be 1st April, Fool's Day.
Yeah. So, what other you expect from us? What
So
other you expect?
I didn't hear you properly. Did you say all the three fools will be around?
Yeah. With all participants also, sir. With all participants, we will join it. So I think that at this point we should finish it. Thank you very
All
much
right.
for participating.
Good night.